today on my YouTube channel, I have my beautiful mother. I thought I would interview her and just get her perspective.
I think there's a couple of things that most grown-ups or parents kind of overlooked when their kids are in relationships, especially from a young age.
Yeah.
So I just have a couple tips for people as far as when they're in healthy relationships versus not healthy relationships that I didn't know about or that I didn't really recognize when someone was.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important, like especially as a survivor, like a really good perspective that needs to be talked about and discussed online.
Yeah, and I also think it's important to be able to give help and advice in a constructive way if they're going through it, because at times when it's happening, they have a tendency, or my daughter had a tendency to either like defend the abuser or pull away and completely cut off communication with me. I think for the fact of it was too hard to admit that it was really happening. And so some of those are a little bit of red flags, along with so she'd get sick or she'd get hurt and that person wasn't even there for her. Like would say,
Very
well,
true.
I'm going to get sick, or I can't be there to help you.
I
Wouldn't
remember
be there to
that.
help support. And so that's like a huge red flag when she would be there for this person and help take care of them and do things.
Wow.
But there was no support at all. Another big red flag is come home and visit like over holidays or long weekends and then do everything in her power not to spend time with this other person, which
It's crazy.
when you're in a healthy relationship, you don't like, you want to spend time with them. You want them to be part of your family, not make excuses of why you didn't want to be with
That's so true.
abuser's family. So yeah,
Wow.
so those are some of the big red flags that I noticed that were important to kind of be on the lookout. But again, if I would mention or ask questions, sometimes it brought her farther away. So I would suggest even just saying, sometimes having a code word and saying, hey, honey, you know, if you need this, I'm just letting you know I'm always there for you. The code word can we go get coffee?
I would call you on the phone. And so like at this point during this relationship, I didn't want to admit it to myself kind of thing. And I'd be like in total denial. A code word is so important and like so healthy, because like there'd be times where this person would be over and it just wasn't safe at that moment in time. Like it just wasn't safe for me. I was like literally afraid of, you know, dangerous, scary things happening. And so I'd call her and it'd be like, sometimes it'd be like midnight.
So she'd call me and say, hey, did you know this? I just learned this and blah, blah, at midnight. And of course I thought she was so excited about learning, but I now know that it was almost because she was calling me because it was protection and she needed someone else on the phone. And when someone's watching every little thing you say or you do.
Right. When you're in those situations, I would do it as if he knew he couldn't do anything, like anything more, you know. But I have that in my first video too. I kind of like go over like my experiences with that, where they'd refuse to leave my apartment. That's also an interesting thing. Like if they randomly call you, reach out to you.
And at odd hours. Like, yeah, and it was almost like she just kept talking about all these things, and so I'm like, okay, you know, that's interesting, and I learned this in school today in this book, and I'm like, okay, you know, of course I love education, but I had some concerns, but again, I just wish I would have said, no matter what, here's a code word. I'm here for you always, whether you want to take it or not, just know that it's there. And me saying it to her, not having the discussion at that time wouldn't have been helpful. As far as, oh, guess what? I'm a little worried about you.
Yeah.
You have to time it and make sure that the other person isn't there to hear things and to put her in a sense of danger. I never wanted to have that happen. But I did have, and I saw a lot of red flags along the way, and we'd have discussions just as much as like we would get together as a family and this person would be with us, but she would get so defensive and be like, be careful what you say, don't say this. And I just thought it was really odd. Like I'm just being myself and I'm being our family. And I was like, well, I'm not really saying anything. But it was always like, you don't want to make him mad. And I'm just like, well, I'm not trying to make anybody mad. I'm just being me. And this is who our family is. So you can get to see who our family is. So that was also another little red flag. Another one was anytime this person had no access to her, this person would start texting me things about, oh, I'm worried or concerned about her, haven't heard about her in 2 days.
It's a big one.
And as a mom, knowing your child is living in a different city, that was almost scary to me. And I thought, well, why would you not know what's going on? But then the text and sometimes phone calls, things would, and even voicemails, I got voicemails would be mean, like horribly mean. So sometimes people don't act the best at certain times, but she's still my daughter, so please don't talk to me that way. Like I would never talk to someone else that way. And so I figured if this person was talking to me this way, to me, what were they talking to her like when I wasn't there was concerning. But again, there were many times I would just come up with questions and just try to make her think about how is she feeling? How is this making her feel? But not tell her, gee, honey, you really need to get out. Because it also has to be her decision or that person's decisions, just like anyone else. They have to come to that acknowledgement. But I wanted them to know that I was always going to be there. So
I think that's another really important thing. Like I talk about it in my past videos about this person would essentially kind of go through my friends, my family, work. There'd be times where I tried to leave him, but I didn't tell anybody. He would like totally turn it around, be manipulative in that way. He would text either my friends, my mom, and be like, yeah, like I haven't heard from her in 3 days. Like, is she okay? And that just created such a weird dynamic that even though he previously before had treated me absolutely horribly and was like abusing me. So like, of course, why would I want to talk to you? But that's such an important part that I think families need to realize.
The biggest, reddest flags that I also saw when the relationship first started, but it filtered throughout the end, is the family value of, and this person would state it over and over and over, that she doesn't have the right to question where I'm at, who I'm with, and what I'm doing. I'm not married and I can do whatever I want to the whole time. And in a loving, caring, healthy relationship, it's common. You just say, hey, I'm going to go hang out with this friends, or you build trust. You have to build trust. So without that, and constant digging about, I can do this and I'm not married and there's no ring on your finger, so how dare you ask me? And the same with this person's family would say the same thing. Like, you don't have a right to ask, and boys will be boys and they can do whatever they want to. Boys will be boys. The whole saying is almost like allowing abuse to happen. And approving of abuse.
Literally.
So boys are humans, so are women, and
Hold them accountable.
There's a sense of common decency as human beings, and when you're in relationships, to give and to take and to be honest. And if you can't be honest between you, then there's other things going on. So that was really hard for me, because I was trying to say, I feel like something's happening behind closed doors and in a family that she was never allowed to be a part of. No holidays, no any of that.
That's another interesting take too. Like, if you're out there and you've experienced that, I know a lot of survivors that we talk to or that we know also had that with the abuser's family, like not allowing you in, sort of thing. I was so young and we'd been together over 4 years, and never once was I allowed to go to any holidays. There'd be strictly family days. Significant others weren't allowed. Really weird things that aren't normal to me, because like for us, it's family, like everybody's invited.
An open door all the time. Because how are you supposed to see if you want to be with someone or commit to someone? Because family is an extension of who you are. Not having any, or being allowed to even see that, is a huge red flag for anyone in any relationship.
I think that just goes to show like the family dynamic and how cycles of abuse continue to happen, because I think sometimes, like, if the family doesn't want you for holidays or for specific things, one, it's like a sense of control from the parent being included, but like also I don't think they didn't want me maybe to see the truth of like their family dynamic and like maybe how abusive that is too. Like, I don't know, it's just That's a really important.
I just think it's so important to look at overall and maybe start thinking of these things before. If you're not in a relationship or at the very beginning stages, it's okay to sit and ask questions.
Yes.
Because once you get invested and once you start having feelings for that person, you're more likely to overlook all of the red flags.
Yes.
And these are things that for any building long-term foundation are super important for a healthy relationship. I think one of the other things too is also, if you're concerned, say if you're a grown-up or if you're a friend of someone or you know someone that you have concerns or you have questions, try not to pressure them or to belittle them when you're talking to them, because they have to make the decision. And sometimes the reality, it took her a long time to even admit it to herself, let alone to say it out loud. I wasn't the first person that she told.
Yeah.
She told several other people first, because admitting it to someone that loves you and that you know is really hard. But just to let them know that you're always there, and not be judgmental if they go back or they're not quite ready to admit that. But also, give them little bits and pieces as far as resources, but done in a loving, caring way of, hey, kind of questions. I saw this or whatever, and I just thought it was really interesting, but not put it towards a personal, and not directed at them personally, but just being available, letting them know that you are there. The best thing that you can do for someone, and just listen. Sometimes just listen.
I wanted to bring up victimization from my abuser's family, because that's also why cycles of abuse continue to happen. And I feel like this is also a really huge theme. And I think every single survivor that we've ever talked to has family of the abuser where they basically victimize you. I had that too, where I told the family everything. I came out to them and told them everything. And apparently my abuser also said he, quote unquote, told them things. But what they wanted to do was protect him, cover it up. They didn't care,
And say, because, someone has a strong personality, she pushed him to it. Well, nobody can push anybody to anything. I can't force myself or anyone else to hit someone, to scream at someone, to really abuse and slam someone's head into something. That's not taking accountability for it. And if the person has impulse control or anger issues, that's on them. That's not on someone else.
Exactly.
The other thing I've heard somewhat also is, well, why don't you just leave? Why don't you do this? I can say for sure, I raised her as a woman to be caring and loving and to help others. But I also forgot to tell her, maybe, and to help share, that she needs some boundaries, and you can't help everyone. And so I think she stayed long time to help someone because she truly does have a heart, and she gave it to someone who really didn't care or deserve it. And so as young women, it's important to know, but she also had the best intent for everyone, because that's how she was raised, to always have the best thoughts about other people. But there are people out there that will take advantage of that.
Exactly.
And so maybe possibly being real with girls and boys who are young, knowing that when someone is hurting you or saying horrible things to you, that isn't okay, no matter what side. That's
or
not
just
love.
Like how you talk about young boys and young girls, like at school. I think just a societal thing, or school, they'd be like, oh, if a boy's mean to you, that means he likes you. No, you deserve the best. Like, you should never take that. That's not love. That's not cute. Like, you know?
And no means no for anyone. That means stop. Because when you don't learn that from a young age, you have a tendency to cross other boundaries. So, and that it's okay to leave a relationship and take time to think about it.
Yes.
And I know my daughter had lots of people in her life, including me, who have been with someone for 35 years. So, and her grandparents and all of her relatives. And so it was almost like this: when you're in a relationship, you try, you do everything. And she was raised up on that, which is a good thing to have, but not when someone is treating you horribly, crossing boundaries, hurting you, and mentally, saying things that they don't go away. Like, there's lines that you just don't cross. And so I think she felt like she needed
Yeah.
to give it her all, and that's the typical thing of what you hear about relationships, when in essence it's okay to walk away when things are not healthy.
You have to pick ultimately, like, I know you're in relationships, but like you have to pick yourself first when you're being hurt over and over and over again. No matter what anyone's gonna say to you, no matter what like it looks like, it's all about that shame and guilt kind of thing. Shame other women or shame relationships when even just like divorces or people walk away or this and that. Oh, I thought it was so perfect, like it looked so good. You got to take the shame and guilt out of it, because like you're doing what's best for you, and that's most important.
Another thing that came to mind several times was this person would constantly promise in the future that things would change.
So important.
Always, things are going to get better. They're going to change. They're going to do this. When I can get out on my own, when I don't have to rely upon my grown-ups for money or other things are going to change. When I get to do what I want, things are going to change.
Future promising
Constantly to get out of situations they may have done or consequences. You know, it just never happens. Those repeated patterns over and over, and it's the same thing over and over, is hard. And so you should be really looking at those patterns and asking those deep questions.
Very
if
important.
The same thing happens over and over, and it's hurtful and it's directed at you, or you know, or they'll say, I don't know why I'm doing this. I just don't know why. I need your help. I don't know why.
Right.
And then refuse.
They put it on you.
And then refuse to get help, even though that they say that they need to get help. But help in this family doesn't work because I can't admit it to anyone, and it's looked down and it's shamed upon. But they really, really need help, and they admit it. But they never take those steps, because in the future I'm going to,
So important. That's such an important thing that I think a lot of people end up in relationships where you're kind of settling. And I think it's also really difficult when you're at a young age, because when you're in that transition period, whether you're going to college, working, like whatever you're doing, you don't start out with like, what you want most of the time or sometimes. And so like when you're young, that's like easy to believe. Well, my abuser was like, in the future, it will be amazing. We can do this thing or that thing, or when I'm done with college. And you should never have to be relying upon this future faking or future promising. You should look at it like in its current state, truly what it is. They're masters at telling you what you want to hear and manipulating like, what your needs or wants are. So I think that's so incredibly important.
It shouldn't be one-sided.
Exactly.
And I know that you really wanted to be loving and caring and giving and doing everything you could for this relationship, but when you're the one always paying for trips, going on things, you so freely gave and gave and gave, but then if there was something that this abuser would pay for, it would be right down to the dime. This person would come to me saying, she owes, or you know, your daughter owes me for gas for $38.72.
Literally,
and yet my daughter had the apartment, my daughter paid for the food, my daughter did all of these things, took on $1,000 trips.
Literally, financial abuse
is a huge red flag. That it should be a give and take freely without having a checklist or things written down in a book.
This person, would document everything that they did for me as if it was a transactional relationship, which is so weird to me, because when you love somebody, it should be equal give and take, like just a natural thing. So like that's a big thing abusers like to do, is they like to hold this little thing against you or hold it over your head. Abusers like to act like the victim in every situation. Like from a young age, they will constantly do that and turn every single thing around on you, whether they're your friend, your family member, like your coworker, will do that to you. And I think it's incredibly important to remember this person is a full-grown adult. You make your own choices, you make your own decisions. There's always a choice to be made, I feel.
And the real victim here is someone who's standing up, giving her truth, who wants to be in front of scrutiny of people. Why would there be a reason to make that up when there's so much documentation with voicemails and pictures and videos and text messages to her, to me, to other people in the family? Nobody wants to be in that hot seat unless that's really their truth. And the reason that she's saying this is that's her truth, is to help others. It's not to put someone else in the hot seat. It's to help other future women and men not be in the same situation and red flags. And so you really need to be listening, because they will try and turn it around and say things about someone else. But Ask yourself that deep question. What is the motivation and what is the reason? And does anybody really want to be on this side of the camera? Unless it's really,
Exactly.
really true.
So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and me interviewing my beautiful
Thank
mom.
you.
I love her so much. Bye.